Percy was not happy. He had been sent by the Fat Controller to work at Barrow In Furness Scrapyards. He hated it. Originally, Caden, the shunter, was meant to do it, but he was ill, and so Percy had to take up the job, and he was livid.
"Bother that Caden," he said. "Why do I have to do his work while he goes away being, well, lazy?" His driver laughed. "Oh, don't be silly, Percy. We know Caden has had trouble with his engine for the past couple of weeks. We're just giving him a little, well, rest. And now I'm working at not even Soder's boundaries. I'm working on the mainland. I shouldn't be doing this. Either Connor or Caitlin could do with this. See, you know Connor and Caitlin are too big for this. Now come on, let's finish this and you can have a nice rest at the Barrow Sheds. Then we can come back in the morning." "Fine, but Gordon and James will never hear me end the end of this." Over the course of the evening, Percy worked hard. He shunted the scrap cars into place and shunted the old, scrapped, lifeless engines into their proper sightings. He hated it. He felt as if someone was watching him, and, knowing Percy, his driver tried to calm him. "It's okay, Percy. No one's here. Let's just continue on with our work and then you can have a nice rest." Oh, he didn't have to say that when we had to deal with Timothy. In all honesty, Percy was a little nervous. Soon it was approaching midnight, and Percy learned that he had just to shunt one more scrapped engine, and then he'll be done for the night. "Well, it looks like I'll be finishing earlier than I expected," he said. "Well, let's get this job over with." Percy headed down the line to fetch the last scrapped engine. But for some reason, he felt as if something was off. He felt as if someone was watching him. He looked around, but no one was there. Thinking that his mind was playing tricks on him, Percy just sighed and, without telling his driver, calmly moved across the yard to get the engine. It took a while to get to it. It was at the very back of the scrapyards. Percy had been in the Barrow before, but this was different. He felt as if he was being lured here. "Well, I don't like the looks of this," he said. "Oh, where is that scrapped engine? Oh, there it is." Then Percy stopped. "What the bloody heck?" Percy blinked. There in front of him stood an extremely tall steam locomotive. It was clearly an American design, but what made it even more weird was that it was an old 410 four-wheel arrangement, something that Percy, who had many friends that were American, never even heard of a locomotive of such type. The engine was very old and rusty. Its boiler bented as if it had been hit by rocks or something. It looked very decrepit. Its headlamp was still in place, except there was a large crack in it. The engine was extremely tall, and long too, with its 410 four-wheel arrangement. Percy had no idea why an American steam locomotive had ended up in this scrapyard, but he knew that something was very off, as if this engine was at the very back of the scrapyards, somewhere where no one, even Caden, ever went to, except absolutely necessary. Percy was suspicious. "Something suspicious here. Why is there an American locomotive on Barrow In Furness Scrapyard? Why, this engine should never be here. And what's with that 410 four-wheel arrangement? No locomotive has that wheel arrangement. Well, except for our experiments on Sodor." The engine just stood there, motionless, lifeless. Percy felt scared. He knew that the engine was watching him, but he couldn't tell if it was alive or dead. He was hoping it was the second option, as if he didn't want to see an engine die. The engine had a very long-looking tender, a PRR one, or an NYC one, he wasn't really sure. But the engine was long and extremely tall. It made Percy look like a bean. He was so small compared to the big American locomotive that was now lifeless. Percy slowly crept up to the old engine. There's absolutely no way I'm gonna haul this to the smelter's pit. What am I gonna do? Suddenly, Percy jumped as the clock struck midnight. Stupid bell! Why does that have to be here? Well, I gotta go find the yard master. There's no way I'll be able to. Burrs! Cried Percy. The once lightless engine's headlamp flashed at him, its bright headlamp beaming bright purple. It seemed to be switching colors between white, purple, and red. Percy had had enough. Percy gave out a loud scream as he ran across the tracks and into a siding, hoping that the engine wouldn't see him. Go away. Please go away. Please go away, he said. The yard was extremely quiet. And then Percy heard the sounds of what was a strange moaning, groaning noise. What is that sound? Percy thought. He was starting to lose his mind. And then he heard the sound of the engine's whistle. It was like nothing Percy had ever heard before. The whistle sounded like a siren. He closed his eyes tightly. Go away, he said. And then he heard the engine moving. Percy opened his eyes and shrieked as the large locomotive, now in operation, slowly puffed towards him, and then slowly began to puff past him. It was ginormous. The engine's cab was now alit, though he couldn't see the crew. It had large curtains between the cab and tender, as if to shield the crew from something. But what? The engine slowly puffed past Percy, his crew just as shocked as he was. He could see the letters on the engine's tender, which read as follows: Ireland, Jerusalem, Australian, and South Michigan line. They were covered in some elegant font, I guess. Percy couldn't believe it. The engine rolled past Percy before accelerating into the night, shrieking out one last time. Percy was terrified. The yard was eerily quiet after that. And as try as they might, his crew could not make him move. I've had enough. I am not moving until daylight, he said. And that was that. Percy stood there in that siding at Barrow In Furness Scrapyard for the rest of the night. But as he tried to sleep, he kept wondering, who was the locomotive that he had just saw? Meanwhile, while all this had happened, Edward the Blue Engine had been in the siding. He had been sent to take a midnight freight train to Barrow In Furness. He had seen everything. He watched the sow tank engine try to sleep. Edward just sighed. I guess the Cannonball followed me here to Sodor, he said. But who is Edward talking about? And what did Percy see? Or who was it? Well, I guess you'll have to come back later to find out.